We are born enlightened. This is the basis for the reported cry by the historical Buddha at his birth. Heaven above, earth below, I alone am the most honored one. Every child's first cry contains this statement, if you listen carefully. Jesus also said we must become like little children to enter the kingdom of heaven. This is because all little children live in a timeless realm commonly known as now, and know that death is unreal. Most children forget this. I am fortunate in that I clearly recall these experiences from my early childhood. I recall it simply because I kept recalling these experiences at intervals as I grew up, and still do. Every young child can retain these memories by doing this. From around the age of 2 or 3 language is learnt and memory develops. These then begin shaping the brain of the child, and the influences of parents, teachers, peers and the world begin to make themselves felt. As a defense mechanism, the self, the ego, begins forming in the brain of the child, which the child then becomes. This is the delusion. Enlightenment can't be attained. We can't become enlightened, since we are all already enlightened. What we must do is to understand our own egos. The ancients made it quite clear that self-knowledge, awareness of the ways of the self, is the key to enlightenment. In directly observing the ways of the self within ourselves, a process facilitated by formal sitting meditation, we come to see that selfhood is a fiction. The self doesn't actually exist, except as a hardwired defensive mental imprint, the self-image, who you know you are, in the synapses of the brain. In essence, we need to unlearn all the nonsense we were taught from early childhood until all delusion, the experience of being separate, a self, has been removed from our makeup. Then we have uncovered what we knew at birth, and we are like little children, without being children. The most basic error in the development of little children, causing the ego to develop, is the imposition of authority. Parents must treat their children as their equals. To do so is the end of all authority. This trend must continue in all learning endeavors and in all learning centers. As long as something is imposed on children from the outside, your values, beliefs, do's and don'ts, musts and must-nots, the ego will inevitably develop, covering up the real, original nature of the child. Not imposing authority doesn't mean license. Children must learn they are free to be, free to express themselves as they are, but not at the parents', teachers' or peers' expense. Equality and absence of authority means that parents, peers and teachers have the same rights as children. My right to be can't exist at your expense, just as your right to be can't exist at my expense. We all have equal right to be, to live our lives as each of us sees fit, and to our privacy. Allowing children this freedom, approving of them and loving them unconditionally, doesn't mean being careless about children's safety either. Common sense, which of course is rather uncommon, must always be applied. There is a great book about all this, The Valid, Right, Optimal Education of Children, so they love life and say yes to life, not becoming limited judgmental haters of life. The book is called Summerhill, by A.S. Neal. You don't have to meditate to become enlightened. You need an open mind. And a lack, or at least a minimum, of fear. That's all. I meditated once. And, first time out, experienced non-duality. I didn't meditate again, not out of fear but out of, mostly, lack of time or real desire, for 12 years. In that time, I had several spontaneous enlightenment experiences. I didn't know what they were. It took some research and a couple years to verify and validify what I had experienced. Since then, I've begun a semi-regular meditation practice and can now experience non-duality, the true self, isness, call it what you will, whenever. I don't mean to make it sound easy. I'm just saying I didn't meditate. I didn't, really, do much of anything. I just kept an open communication with the other side. And had no fear. I've read enough accounts to know that the experiences of people on psychedelic drugs are just as valid as the experiences of people who've studied with gurus, meditated, etc. for years. In some cases, I think they may be more valid as they lack any planted ideas about what they're supposed to experience. When trying to verify my own experience, the person who actually came closest to describing one aspect of what had happened was, of all people, Michael eat food. Not a lot, mostly plants. Pollen in his book, How to Change Your Mind. And he was very much a skeptic. So meditate. Or don't. If you do, choose guided if you find them more interesting, or buy a book, like I did, and try to figure it out for yourself.